So we've all been there, you've got your band gig, but there's no horn section, it's just you on saxophone, and you've got to play all these popular tunes that most people play in bars, clubs, and gigs and functions, and all the rest of it. So, what do you play when you're the only saxophone player on the gig? It can be tricky. So, let's get straight into this. The first thing you can play, obviously, if you're doing a song with an actual sax solo, you can play that sax solo. For example, if you're doing Careless Whisper, you play the sax line. So that's kind of captain obvious, isn't it? If you're doing Simply the Best, you can play the sax solo. And if it is a famous sax solo, I would play the actual sax solo that people know. But that is relatively unusual. So more often you'll be playing a song that's got either no horn lines or some recognizable horn lines. So let's talk about those kind of scenarios. First of all, if you're playing a song which has got a recognizable hook, you will play that hook, but put a little spin on it to make it your own, to make it a little bit, you want to make these lines which are played with the horn section a little bit more saxy. Not using sax puns, but you want to make the lines a little bit more sax-like, a little bit more soloistic, so that they blend more with the sound of the instrument and the way that the sax works when it plays on its own. So let's take something like Moon Dance, which is a song that a lot of people might play. You'd play the main sort of riffs, but to try and just very slightly make them your own. Something like this.
Moonlight seems to shine in your blood. Can I just have one more moon dance with you, my love? Can I just make some more romance with you, my love? Well, I wanna make love to you tonight. I can't wait.
So playing the main themes, but just making them a little bit more soloish, maybe a tiny few little fills to blend it in. Or let's take something like September by Earth, Wind & Fire, disco-y one, which has got really strong identifiable horn section with lots of horns. You could kind of take the main idea of the lines, but add your own little tweaks and make it fit more for saxophone like this. And then when you get more to the chorus, it's the same idea. You play the main riffs that the main horn section do in the original, but you just kind of make them a bit more sort of saxophonic to fit in with a solo saxophone. Okay, the second strategy that you can use is to liaise with the keyboard player in your band, if you've got a keyboard player that is, and see if you can work something out to do horn section parts together. Now, this is fraught with problems. I have done it successfully once or twice, but the main problems are the phrasing. The keyboard player very likely won't know about horn section phrasing. So you're going to have to get together and rehearse and make sure that you're playing all the longs and shorts and the kind of, the little tweaks and the subtleties together. And the other main problem is that quite often the keyboard player will have absolutely terrible brass sounds. They might have really good ones, in which case, quids in. You're also going to have to work out the voicings and who's playing what. It might be more of a question of playing alto and playing the top trumpet line with the keyboard player filling out the brass parts. But that's something a bit specialised. You've got to work it out together. When I played with Leroy Hudson, me and the keyboard player, we did that successfully on the tour of Japan. But we had to spend a lot of time working out the horn parts. And I actually wrote out all the horn parts for him, which he could play on his right hand on the keyboard. And that's the third problem of this setup, is the keyboard player might be busy doing other things and they can't suddenly start playing horn parts. So just before we move on to the third strategy for when you're the only horn player in the band, if you want to improve your sax playing across the board, go and check out my free Saxophone Success Masterclass, the link of which is in the description, and you can see it down there. There's loads of really cool stuff there, loads of tips and tricks and stuff to improve your sound and your improvising. And believe me, this will instantly make you a better saxophonist and improve how you practice and a whole bunch of other stuff. So go and check out the Saxophone Success Masterclass, and let's move on to the next strategy. The third strategy is much more about what you don't play, very importantly. For example, when you're playing horn section stuff which is chordal and stabby, that doesn't really sound very good when you play it on your own on sax. You just sound like a bit of a spare part going bang, bang. It's got no punch or body to it because there's only one horn. The other things that don't sound very good are long notes without the nice chords, like long pads without the chords to support them. They sound pretty bad as well. So try not to do long notes, like whole notes or semi-breves. I call it the egg factory. That generally doesn't work very well. And don't do the stabby stuff. So take a tune like I Will Survive, which is a popular function classic. You don't want to do that map, bap, bap stuff on the stabs, but when it gets to the actual main melody of da-dee-doo-doo-dee-doo, that's actually quite a good melodic thing to play. So you're going to weed out all that kind of stuff that doesn't work very well for solo saxophone. It just feels a bit demoralizing going meh, meh, meh. It's just not a good look. And focus on the main melodies that you can really make a difference on. And while we're talking about leaving stuff out and what you choose to play, do not noodle aimlessly over the whole song just because you're the only sax player and there's no horn section. That is just the worst thing you can do. So don't just keep blowing over the whole song, okay? Be strategic. You're the only sax, you're the only horn there, so you've got to be patient and you've got to choose your moment. You've got to be tasteful and choose something that's going to make an impact. The last thing anybody wants to hear in the band or the audience is you just kind of vomiting pentatonic scales or worse over the whole song, all right? So let's be classy. Okay, strategy 4. If the lines which are in the original song don't really work too well, just try and make up a new part, maybe for the chorus or whatever, or the intro that does work well for saxophone. So let's take something like Blame It on the Boogie, and there's a lot of stabby stuff in the original horn parts, which doesn't necessarily work that well for sax. So you could try modifying those riffs to make them work, or even making up a new kind of repetitive riffy figure that might fit the song a bit better. Here's a sort of example of what I'm talking about. Okay, the last two tips are a bit more fringe. Tip number 5 is if you have the opportunity, maybe consider bringing 2 or 3 different saxes. So take a baritone, alto, tenor. I know it's a big hassle, but if you're driving and you can drive right up to the gig and you've actually got those horns, then that's something worth considering because it provides a bit more contrast, a bit more variety. Certain songs will suit the punchiness of alto. Certain things will suit the more kind of growliness of tenor, like the rock and roll-y type stuff. And if you're doing something like Mustang Sally, for example, you can bust out the baritone and give it a few nice burps to really kind of add to that extra flavour. Hey, just before I get to the final tip, I've got a bonus video every single week inside the Inner Circle. It's called the YouTube Backstage Pass. And it's all the stuff I didn't really have time to include in the YouTube videos. And that is all inside the Inner Circle, as well as countless other benefits, really cool stuff, which is really going to bring your playing forward and give you just an awesome, friendly, enthusiastic community to share your hobby with. That is where you will find me day in, day out. That is where you can ask me anything you want in monthly Q&A sessions. So if you want a bit more of me, check out the Inner Circle. It's an awesome place to be. The link is right there in front of you and in the description. Hope to see you inside the Inner Circle with all those other cool sax players. Okay, the final tip doesn't really involve playing saxophone, but it's something to think about if you're the only horn in the band, and that is to bring some other stuff to do to fill out those gaps when you're tastefully not playing. For example, bring a cowbell, bring a tambourine, shaker, bring, bits of percussion. If you've got any sort of a voice, consider doing some backing vocals, carefully work them out with the rest of the singers. Don't just, be caterwauling away. And I don't know if you play guitar or if you play keys, but if you play any one of those instruments, which is like a useful thing to contribute to the gig, bring them along, because you're going to be standing around, much of the time, and you might as well make yourself useful. But if you are going to play those things, make sure that they're half decent and they fit in with the band. And if you don't play any of those things, you're not going to bring them, and you are standing around, at least look like you're moving and grooving. You can get the crowd going. Don't, stand there like a spare part looking bored, because that's going to bring the vibe of the gig down. You've got to take it to the audience, even if you're not playing. Bring some real good stagecraft, some good energy, which is going to bring the audience into the band. So at least if you're not playing, you can contribute by bringing some vibes to the table. That is all we have time for this week. I hope you've picked up some useful tips. Remember, inside the Inner Circle, there's a whole different video adding to what you've learned today, as well as countless other really cool things. So go and check that out. Like I mentioned before, go and check out the absolutely free Saxophone Success Masterclass. You fill in your email, job done. You can watch it straight away, right after this video. If you've bought me a coffee, you are an absolute saxophone star. So thank you very much. Every bit of caffeine is much appreciated. That's a link if you want to buy me a coffee while I hit my desk accidentally. And until next week, make sure you practice hard, practice smart, and enjoy your music. Take it easy. Okay, the last two tips are a little bit more. Let me take these headphones off, guys.